Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I have recently I've been doing stories, talking to people about their real stories occurring with their healthcare, how it's handled in different places. And luckily, yesterday I received an email from Jonathan Hall in Stavanger, Norway. I hope I said that right, Jonathan.
That sounds right.
And he had a story, and I asked him to come on to Politics Done Right to tell us a little bit about that. So, Jonathan, first of all, you are from the United States of America. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And what blew you over to Europe, to Norway?
Okay, well, that's another story. But in 1984, in the beginning of November of 1984, we had an election in the United States. I was working in Kentucky, in my hometown there, Lexington. And, that Wednesday, man, I looked at that big map with all those red states on it. And I said, the hell with this. I can't work with these people. I'm just gonna run, and I hung around to Thanksgiving, and then I was gone.
Also, you are braver than most. A lot of people felt that way, and they decided to just, some were able to leave, and lucky you were able to get out and do what you wanted to do. But anyhow, one of the issues that I speak a whole lot about is Medicare for All. I speak a lot about healthcare. And what we find here is that we have a healthcare system that I consider very evil, but most Americans have a tendency to believe that this is the best you have. This is the best one can expect. I was happy to hear from you because you have a story to tell. So what I would love for you to do is to tell us your story with healthcare in Norway, where you're at right now.
Okay. I've lived in Norway for almost 33 years now. And the health care that I have received myself has been excellent. Fortunately, thankfully, I haven't had any serious problems myself, but I've been in the hospital once for an appendicitis, and it was fixed, and I was there for several days. They wouldn't let me out until they were absolutely sure that everything was fixed. This is 15, 20 years ago. 2 years ago, our son, who was 17 at the time, got in a motorcycle accident. He had, as a result of that, he had massive brain trauma. And they put him in an induced coma. He was in an induced coma for about 6 weeks. After that, most of that time was in the ICU. Then after that, there were several weeks when he was recovering before he was actually starting to get a few words, starting to talk again and learn how to talk, learn how to walk. Then he was in rehabilitation in the nearby city of Bergen, a specialist rehabilitation center for trauma victims, with complete physical rehabilitation, physical therapy, speech therapy, manual therapy, with just a whole team of specialists looking after him. Wonderful people, amazing health professionals doing all this work around him pretty much 24 hours a day. The point, I guess, is that this was free. We didn't pay anything for any of this. And I don't know how to get that reality across to you, to your viewers. I can't put it any more simply than that. And one thing is even more important than that is that it was simple. There was nobody to deal with except for health professionals. They looked at the patient. When you go to a doctor here, well, as I said in my email earlier, I didn't have to sign my name until several weeks after this was all over, when I was applying for a reimbursement for some travel expenses. Then they wanted me to fill out some forms.
So let me ask you this. Here it is that your son got taken care of free of charge. Well, we know it's not really free of charge. Everybody pays into the system because you pay taxes, but that is how it's done. So what you're telling me now is you even got reimbursed for the travel that you had to do to take care of your son.
Right, back and forth to the hospital and the rehabilitation center, several trips, both me and his mother. Sure, nothing's free. Everybody knows that. I'm not going to try to fool you or put out some kind of utopian bull thing. It's of course, we pay taxes. They're moderate. It costs. Life is expensive, but I get back to this, and we could go into the details about the taxes and stuff here. I compared it with people I've talked to in the United States, and they said, "Oh, well, that's not too bad."
Because what is amazing, Jonathan, is a lot of people don't realize if you have to have insurance, right? Because you want to make sure you're taken care of, and your insurance is costing you $15,000 a year, which is pretty inexpensive here in the United States. That is effectively another $15,000 a year tax you're paying anyway.
Right.
The only difference is that it's going to a whole lot of rich fat cats who who skim that to make a few people profits. You don't have that in Norway.
Right. Like I was saying, when you deal with a health professional here, the guy looks you in the eye and he says, "Okay, I have some bad news for you. This is a medical crisis that is going to change your life in drastic ways." Or he looks at you. He looks you in the eye and he says, this is a problem. This is an appendicitis. We can fix this. We've done it 1,000 times. You're going to be in the hospital a few days. But what he doesn't do is he doesn't say, here's all these forms to fill out. Who is your insurer? Who is your provider? Who is, are we approved by your insurance company? Who's paying for this? It's just not there. And that's the beauty of the system. Not how much it costs. It's cheaper. As I put in my mail, I looked up these figures. 17.8% of the United States GDP is used on health care. In Norway, it's 10.4%.
You know what is interesting? Before you said that, Jonathan, what I'd like folks to understand, because I'm an engineer by training before I turned political activist, and all I believe in are numbers. And the interesting thing is the difference in those numbers, because you have to admit, let's say people in Norway and America, they are, of similar health. Of course, Norway probably healthier because better healthcare, but that differential that you see in GDP is exactly the amount of money you could calculate is extracted to enrich the few that controls a medical industrial complex. It's amazing.
Yeah. What do they do to deserve all of these profits?
Right.
I don't know. So that's our situation here. It's been like this since 1910, I think.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's just a matter, of course, that your health care is part of what you pay for when you make this contract with society. That I'm going to go to work, pay taxes. And when I go to the doctor, when my neighbor goes to the doctor, even if I'm healthy all my life, when my neighbor goes to the doctor, I can go over to him and take him a box of candy and say, get well soon. I don't have to worry about him losing his house. It's
what I think you mentioned that Michael Moore was over there and the system was so good. He didn't put it into his film Sicko because he think it would be unbelievable. Many people wouldn't believe that a system could be created that is that good.
I saw this somewhere, and I haven't had a chance to look it up again. I think you probably find it on YouTube. He did an extra report from Norway as a kind of addendum or appendix to Sicko. Mm-hmm. So it's whatever. It's a 5-minute report that didn't go into the film. Mm-hmm. So the system here is more streamlined and cheaper and easier than in a lot of countries.
Now, did your son have to wait in a waiting room at all when he had that emergency?
No, it was right into. He was way out in the wilderness. We live in some of the most beautiful scenic country in the world. It's just amazing. And he was out in a place where it's kind of hard to get to. So they took him from the top of this road. They took him in an ambulance to a nearby village where he was transported by helicopter to the hospital.
And how much did the helicopter cost you?
What?
That's my point. I was being funny because over here, when they live flight you, you're talking about $8,000 to $10,000. Right.
I don't know how you deal with it. I honestly don't. I was fairly young when I moved. I was pretty much just out of school, and I'd been working for a couple of years, but I hadn't really started on an adult life. I hadn't been dealing with all of these real problems that you all do. But when I talk to somebody there who has gone through some of this, and they start talking about co-pays and providers and terms that I don't know anything about, I'm just like, you want to go to a doctor and you want to look them in the eye and say, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my body? What is this that's affecting my family? How are we going to deal with this? You don't want to go in there and start talking about insurance.
Well, let me just tell you, my daughter just had a stroke 2 weeks ago. She's 20.
Yeah, I heard about that, and I hope that
She's doing much better than any of us would have expected, and in fact, she went to her first class less than 2 weeks after her stroke. She's still half blind in the eye, but my daughter is a trooper. She is a trooper.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, Jonathan, why I also wanted your story is you make it quite clear that you have an acquaintance that died at 50 years old in the United States. Tell us a story.
Well, the story is that, you grow up with these people. And I've known this guy since I was 18 or so. We went to school together. And we worked together. We played in a band together. We worked at the theater together, and he was such a charming guy and so funny and so full of life and amusement and love of life. And he had some, what started out as just minor health problems. He got some problems with his kidneys, and that didn't get taken care of because, as I put in my email, I said that he was a musician, I guess you'd call it an itinerant musician. He worked from day to day. He was always on the fringes of what we would call an adult employment situation. And over the years, he got his treatment in emergency rooms.
Right.
He couldn't afford to go anywhere else. So they would send him home as soon as they could. They would say, no, we can't treat this. We can give you something for the pain. We can put a plaster on it, but you don't put a plaster on, advanced, kidney stones and later on kidney failure that was treated in the emergency room. And with, I don't know about the admittance to the hospital at that time, but, it was just a complete fuck up. How can you deal with this without having just huge resources? So he, a couple of years before he died, there were several of us who realized how bad it was because he wasn't complaining about this. He was just going and fixing things up as best he could. And, we took up a collection. I don't know if it was together, it was a couple of $1,000s or something, but it was really nothing. And it was too little too late. It was a couple of years later that, somebody called me up and said, look, Matt went into the emergency room last night, and while we were waiting there, he had some kind of seizure, and they couldn't save him. So it's the wrong kind of treatment to give to a patient.
Our system kills, and that's what I'm trying to express, Jonathan, to our audience is that we have a medical system that is not only corrupt, it's not only evil, it's not only immoral, but it actually kills. And people know that
unhealthy, at least.
Yes. And people that run this system know that they're just using the people as income sources as opposed to trying to help them heal. I'm talking about those on the top. I'm not talking about the doctors. I'm not talking about the nurses. These are wonderful people, most of them. But the system just doesn't work. Look, in closing, what I want to talk to you about is, first of all, have you been back to the United States recently, or?
I was there last time in October of 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there in time to see the last debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And I realized that, we were in real danger of having this guy elected. It was a shocking experience. I wasn't just in rural Kentucky that time. I was also in New Orleans,
right,
and Los Angeles. So I had, I got to see. I got some pleasure out of the trip as well.
Okay.
But sure, it's spooky to go back, and I'll be going back in a few weeks, and. I hope that, I wish everybody there the best. I think that America is so full of wonderful, amazing people.
Yes.
And they deserve better.
Yes.
And they deserve a democracy. They deserve to have one vote count, one vote, one person count. Not all of this rigmarole like we've had in Iowa, like we have with the
Electoral College.
I still vote. I'm going to vote in the global primary in the beginning of March, Super Tuesday.
So you'll be voting, yeah.
I'll be voting in November, of course.
Well, let me tell you, Jonathan, I am going to post your videos and this interview, let people know what can be. And I am going to be doing a whole lot of these to ensure that we let Americans know that there's a better way. What we have here is a mainstream media that tries its best not to inform as they should. I mean, all our media have the ability to come out to Norway, to go to Sweden, to go to all these countries that have similar systems where people are taken care of, that our media don't do that tells us that it's a whole plutocracy that no matter what party is running, somehow they stick together to ensure that we have this corrupt, evil, and immoral healthcare system. Thank you so kindly, Jonathan Hall. Some final words that you'd like to say.
Well, power to the people, just keep working, keep fighting, and take care of yourselves through all of this. Through all this corruption, we still live in a beautiful world, and we need to take care of each other.
Jonathan Hall from.
Thank you very much, Egberto.
Muchas gracias from Stavanger, Norway. You have a wonderful day, sir. I appreciate
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Let's go to Coach Cam. Coach, how you doing?
Berto, good morning. Top of the morning to you.
Yeah, let me just first introduce you. Coach Cam is a precinct chair in the Harris County Democratic Party, an activist as well. And Coach Cam was a leader or one of the organizers of executing a very important feat yesterday at the CEC meeting. Coach, I wanted to actually get you on camera there, but I had to bail out of there because I had other commitments. But thank you for calling in. Tell us what happened yesterday at the Houston Democratic Party County Executive Committee meeting.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a build-up over 8 or 9 months, but last night, overwhelmingly, a vote of 186 to 80, we aligned as a party. We decided to come together as a party and send Mayor Whitmire a very clear message that he will not be able to seek our endorsement for the upcoming race or any races that he may seek moving forward.
Tell us why it is that you organized that movement. What was his, como se dice, delito? What was his crime, if you will?
Yeah, I'd like to address that. And by way, I've heard a few talking points or critiques I think it makes sense to address as well. We gave this speech yesterday. You have 2 minutes to make your points, and you're kind of, rambling your mouth, and you really can't unpack some of these points. The first thing I'll say is, again, as a coach, you never want to kick anybody off your team, right? Like every player you have on your team, you have them there because you think they're an asset and they're going to make you better. So, to have a person on the team that's a mayor, you definitely want that person on your team, right? So I'm saying that to say the actions that the mayor took were so egregious that it was clear that the team would be better removing that person from the team and uniting and working without that person. So folks who disagree on the mayor's policies, on the mayor's ideology, that disagree with the rainbows being torn up and some of the stuff with the streets, the budget. My goodness, a lot of folks disagree with the cooperation with HPD, with ICE. Those are things that obviously a lot of us really, really disagree with. But what made it untenable for him to remain on the team was he betrayed the team. There's really only one thing you can do. There's a whole bunch, people talk about what's a good Democrat, what's a bad Democrat. It's really hard to pin down the definition of a good Democrat, right? But it's very easy to pin down the definition of a bad Democrat. A bad Democrat's actions to undermine and weaken the party. At the top of the year, Mayor Whitmire hosted and fundraised for Republican congressional elected in Congressional 2, Dan Crenshaw. And that itself became a non-starter and a disqualifier. So that was the basis of this action.
Now, it's amazing because some people just said, he has to work with Dan Crenshaw. That is ridiculous. Dan Crenshaw is not a friend of the middle class. Dan Crenshaw is not a friend of the poor. If you take a look at the policies that he supports, including his affiliation with MAGA has done, any politician who associates with self, albeit and especially with funding, can't tell you how proud one has to be that this vote wasn't even close as far as saying you are not one of us. This vote was not close, but I think it was a vote that's necessary because I wrote an article last night and I mentioned your name as being one of the leaders that actually got something done. Because too often, Cam, one allows what I call posers that don't have your interest just because they have a label on them to simply support them. And what you guys said was, hell no. And you didn't say hell no by a little. 70% of the precinct chairs 70% of the precinct chair says, we have no use for you. And that was a great job that you did.
Appreciate that so much. And I think that while we're speaking of this was a team win. And I appreciate the fact that you continue to say we, right? Because this was a ton of activists, a ton of precinct chairs, and folks working their tails off to the bone. Not a single dollar was raised or earned or put out. This wasn't paid support, paid staff, as much as heavy of a lift as it was. Some resources, I'm sure, would have been appreciated and needed for the amount of work that folks put in. This was $0, 0 pennies up against a $10 million war chest. So this actually was a grassroots, a grass tops movement versus money.
What I liked as well is, like, I spoke to a few people who signed the letter supporting the mayor. And above and beyond showing my disappointment with them, and, many of these are friends, above and beyond showing the disappointment, I did, however, there are a lot of good people that had their name on that list. It shows you how the only way to break the machine is doing it at the grassroots, the way you did it. I saw some of the major leaders. They made sure to keep their name off. Like I said, I understand the political pressure that many were under. But again, you showed that grassroots movement works. But more importantly, before March primaries in Texas, all of those who don't follow the values, the orthodoxy that believe in people, the orthodoxy that goes ahead and say people first, they need to be out before those primaries in order to ensure the primaries elect people of values. Thank you very much, Coach. And give me a last word before we move on.
Yeah, in closing, I'd say people have enjoyed dancing on the graves of Democrats all year. The brand is in the tank. People don't know what we stand for. That may be true in other places. I can't speak on that. I live in Texas. I live in Harris County. I can speak on the Democratic Party being well and alive here. We're fired up. We just had a fantastic win over the weekend at City Council, and we've got about 90 days until we begin to kick tail again. So these primaries are here, guys. Primaries are all about competition. It's a friendly pregame match before the championship in November. So for those who are risk averse and afraid of competing, roll your sleeves up, because we've got to get a little better so we can go win in November.
Thank you very much for your good work, Coach. And you keep it up, and you have the support of a hell of a lot of people. All right, brother?
Hey, team effort, guys. Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All of our country's problems, from polarization to ignorance on domestic and international issues to a complete misunderstanding of our economic and healthcare systems, are a direct result of a derelict mainstream media that too often bend over backwards to support corporate or bought politicians' wants as opposed to the people's needs for real information to make their lives better. Independent media is the only solution to inform truthfully and factually. Why? Because our loyalties are to you, the ones who fund us with small dollar contributions and subscriptions. Please consider supporting our independent media platforms by subscribing to our Egberto Off the Record newsletter at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Again, that is politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. It's an investment that pays incalculable dividends.
Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willies, your host. Today, I am honored to have somebody special. We've been talking about in every district, we need to run competent people ready to hold the bull by the horns and win. Well, let me just tell you, David Womack. David Womack enters the race for Congress in Washington's 5th district with a record rooted in service, leadership, and accountability. Retired Air Force colonel, he once led medical operations at Fairchild Air Force Base, taking responsibility for the health and readiness of tens of thousands of service members and their families. After uniformed services, he brought that mission home, running a rural hospital and later helping oversee healthcare delivery for more than 100,000 people. Those experiences shaped a worldview centered on dignity, access to care, and an economy that works for working families rather than corporate interests. In this interview, Womack explains why Eastern Washington deserves representation focused on people, not power. How you doing, my dear friend?
I'm doing super, Egberto. How are you today?
I am doing fine. Let me just tell you, I'm just happy that we have real folks making a race competitive in areas that many times people think are restricted to the other side.
Yes.
What specifically within your military and healthcare leadership convinced you that Congress needs somebody like you right now?
Well, I think the military and civilian healthcare work that I've done has really shaped a lot of my worldview and my national view, all the way, from the dynamics that operate in those sorts of environments to the impact it has on real people. I've seen it in patients. I've seen it in staff inside my hospitals. I learned some of my biggest lessons from early in my career when I supervised housekeeping departments, laundry departments, food service operations for hospitals, those sorts of things. And especially in the whole area of healthcare, some of those people were working strictly for health benefits, and they were trapped in their jobs because we offered those in the hospitals and they couldn't get them, or their family couldn't get them elsewhere. So that's really shaped my worldview. But that's not what brought me to this decision. What brought me to this decision was that, several weeks ago, I was so down about what was going on in our country. And it was just, it was really eating at me, and it was starting to get to me and affect me personally. And I thought, I've got to reframe this somehow. I've got to think about this differently. And so I went for a walk in the park, and I'm blessed to have a park very near my house. And as I was walking, I was thinking, okay, how can I think about this differently? And the thought that came to me was that in crisis, there's opportunity. And so I kept walking, thinking, okay, what the heck's the opportunity here? And I started thinking that, the whole MAGA thing is going to end at some point. And we start to, and several weeks ago, when I first started thinking about this, we were starting to see cracks around the edges. And now we're starting to see much bigger cracks amongst MAGA. So either it's going to end because they're going to self-destruct, they're going to eat each other, which they seem to be starting to do. Or, God forbid, I don't wish it on anybody, but Donald Trump won't survive office. Or if we have free and fair elections next November, the House could put a stop to a lot of the madness just by having a blue House. We could throw a wrench in a bunch of the stuff. And then if the people are still as upset as they seem to be getting right now, and there's a really big blue wave in 28, we have the opportunity to get things we've never been able to get before. We could get universal health care. We really could. If we had it and the people stay behind it. We've been working on that since FDR, and we could finally pull that off. And then we could work on having affordable housing. We could put an end to the tariffs. The Constitution gives tariffs to Congress, not to the president. Well, Congress largely ceded a lot of that years ago, but Congress needs to take that back. So I started to have hope in the future and think, okay, this is really cool. And then that was a Saturday morning where I was starting to think this way. And then Sunday evening we went to dinner at our neighbor's house, and we got around to talking about the state of the nation and everything. And I started explaining some of these thoughts I had, and like a bad husband, I hadn't told my wife about these these budding thoughts, and she sat there and she listened. And then the next morning she got up and she looked at me and she said, "So are you ready to run?" And I thought, wow. Okay, so we talked about it for a few days, the pluses and minuses, the other candidates in the race, and I talked to some of the local party leaders here, and I got really big thumbs up from them. So here I am, and that's kind of the origin story of this run here. And
you would not imagine how much I love your origin story, brother. Let me tell you, especially, I am an activist.
Yes, you are.
I am old, and I do a lot of writing, but this is not what my first profession was. I was an engineer with a software development company. And like you, this is why your story is so, it touches me so warmly. When I gave up all of that, it was, I had an epiphany just like you did. I sat back and I said, this needs to change. This needs to change. Why isn't somebody doing something about this?
Yeah.
Then I said, if you keep asking why somebody going to do something, when is somebody going to do something about it, then nobody's going to do something about it. Look in the mirror. And that's what you did. And that is the very type of person we need in Congress. Somebody that's going to say, we need these things done. Who's going to do it? Nobody else step up. I'm going to do it. First of all, let me just say one thing, brother. Future Congressman David Womack, that is what we need in Congress. So let me tell you a few things that I learned about your district. Okay. And the reason I want to do this is the following. This district is made for somebody like you. Here it goes. The Medicaid population in your district is about 30%.
Yes.
The SNAP people on SNAP in your district about 16.5%. Medicare in your population about between 18 and 19%. Social Security for those over 65, all on Social Security. Median age 38.9. Let me tell you something. That demographic doesn't fit the big, beautiful bill. That demographic doesn't fit everything that is happening in Congress right now. You just gave me a narrative. Your narrative, David, was imagine if we get enough of me in Congress, we can have universal health care.
Yes.
We can have all these things. There's not much to say to you, David, other than go to hell and win the thing.
Well, that's what we're going to try and do. We're going to try and do it. And you talk about some of the unique factors in our district, and another one is the geographic landscape. Our district is huge. We go from Canada to Oregon. That's the borders, north and south. On the east is Idaho, and on the west is kind of the Columbia River. It kind of wiggles the state there a little bit, but it's huge. But it's largely rural. And it's made up of lots of small communities that depend on farming, some on ranching, and up north, they depend on timber. And I will tell you that this administration's actions in our current representatives' inability to stand up with an independent mind and do what's best for the constituents is really, really harming the farmers. The tariffs that this administration put in, it was an immediate hit to our wheat farmers. We grow lots and lots of the world's wheat right here, but they import their fertilizer from Canada. So that was just like an immediate jump in their costs of inputs. And now, that it's been going on for a few months, they're starting to see increases in costs for machinery and parts, which even small family farms have big combines, big pieces of equipment, and that's starting to hit them like crazy. And then, the farmers struggle with the issue of immigration because they depend on a lot of labor from immigrants in our area. And these are often people who they've worked with for years and treat these people like family. And they see the fear in their adopted family members' eyes of what's going on with immigration. So although farmers traditionally vote red, the farm families I've talked to, and I've talked to several around the district in the last few weeks, their response ranges from, I'm not real happy with my boy Trump, to I am spitting mad, as one of them told me. So I think we have a real opportunity if we focus on those issues and not the labels of the party, that we can get some votes that we've traditionally not been able to get. And so in all of my campaign materials, I do not identify myself as a Democrat. not because I'm afraid of it or ashamed of it or anything like that. I'll happily tell anybody who asks, but I want to talk about the issues and then let them decide without the labels of what's best for them.
Given the history of your district, I think that is a wise move. I mean, people would realize what's in the heart and what's going to make. And you mentioned about the amount of farmers that are out there. The Affordable Care Act, many of them don't know that they are actually on Obamacare, but many of them are because it's given another name. Luckily, however, Washington is one of the states that took the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. So many of these farmers would qualify, depending on the crop yield they had that particular year. They would qualify for some of these subsidies, etc. And in the long run, if you are elected, they will be okay because you will be one vote to support them. There's one thing that I don't think you mentioned, and that is with the angst that we have been given Canada, a lot of tourism that normally comes from Canada into your border cities, border towns, I should say, are affected severely with the tariff and the angst that Trump is giving them, correct?
Absolutely. Border crossings from Canada are down 25% this year. And those are people that were crossing the border to spend money. I mean, that's what they were doing. They were coming in for tourism. And you talked about border towns, and we don't have a whole lot of really big border towns across the top of our state. It's pristine wilderness up there.
Right.
It's still down 25%. They were coming a little further down into the state. But, I was in Vermont and Plattsburgh, New York earlier in the summer for a little vacation and family thing. And everywhere we went last summer in those towns along the border up there, the businesses were all flying Canadian flags. Some of them in addition to American flags, but some of them just flying Canadian flags. And they had signs out front that said, "We love our Canadian neighbors." And I mean, who could not love Canadians? They're the nicest people in the world,
Yeah.
So at least that's my experience.
Oh, my experience have always been good with Canadians, always. Now, look, the Eastern Washington, where you're located as well, struggles with hospital closures, provider shortages, and rising costs. What concrete federal actions would you prioritize to stabilize and expand rural healthcare to those farmers you spoke to me about, to those loggers you spoke to me about, and many of those others in your vicinity?
So one of the first things that we have to do is we have to do away with the cuts that have been done to Medicaid, and stabilize that, and then work on the restore the subsidies to the Affordable Care Act. Just like you said, that's the immediate short-term plan that we have to do, because all those hospitals out there are nervous. The people are nervous as well. My neighbors, she gets her health care off the Affordable Care Act. She paid $8,500 for her plan this year. She got her bill this week. It is $20,000 for next year. For the exact same plan, exact same benefits. So that's the short-term thing we have to do. And then in the long term is universal health care. And yes, that's complicated. Yes, that's a big change from the way American healthcare has been done. But American healthcare, let me tell you, I've lived this system. I know it. It is Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid. And it's time to rip those Band-Aids off and have a rational national healthcare policy. And that's universal healthcare. And then there's a lot of other things we can do as well. We can reform our visa programs for doctors and nurses and professionals who are already trained or who are being trained. This country has a history of nursing shortage, and we've solved it in the past by bringing in bright students from overseas and putting them through nursing school and giving them stipends to live on while they're there. We did that in the 60s and 70s, and it largely helped solve our nursing shortage. Another reason that we have a nursing shortage is because of the pipeline for nurses. Nursing schools They're small, and they have a limited number of enrollment, and it's competitive to get in, which is great. It's competitive to get in because you get generally highly qualified people coming out, but that door needs to be wider. We can support nursing education. We can support more medical education for the allied health professionals as well. So doing the visa piece of that as well, making sure that people, foreign graduates who do come into the country, serve in medically underserved areas, which is a large part of this district as well. And then to help stabilize the hospital on top of the manpower piece of it, most hospitals in a rural area are something called a critical access hospital. And that's a special designation by the federal government that a hospital applies for. And when they get that designation, they sign up for some requirements. But what they get is reimbursed for their cost. They fill out a detailed cost report every year. They get reimbursed for their cost plus 1%. Medicare cost and Medicaid cost plus 1%. Well, you tell me a business that can survive and thrive on a 1% profit margin. In this area, the typical rural hospital, 70% of their population is either Medicare or Medicaid. Mm-hmm. So that means the only profit they might have, the only retained earnings they may have, comes from 30% of their population who's on commercial insurance.
Right.
So you can't give your staff raises. So guess what? Nobody wants to work in these little hospitals. You can't keep them up with the cost of living, and you can't invest in the future with new equipment. So pretty straightforward fix would be, let's make that reasonable. Make it 103, 104%. I mean, that make a huge difference to these hospitals out here and stabilize them.
And it would be a saving. It would be a saving because these people, as opposed to having to travel to the major cities or anything, they can get care locally, and it saves the system altogether. Now, I like what you had to say with regards to making sure you expand the availability of training doctors and nurses here in America with Americans, and where there's a stopgap measure that's needed, where there's already ready-made nurses that can come in, et cetera, and work in these rural areas. They are there, because I think that is so important. My daughter was in medicine before she got a couple of strokes. And one of the things that she pointed out often was how difficult it was for Americans to be to get a medical degree or to get a nursing degree because of the expense and so forth. And a lot of hospitals believe, well, we can get ready-made nurses that are already trained, ready-made doctors that are already trained. That part that you put in there that says we open the door to train more, we make it more affordable to train more, I think is so important. Now, the middle class in the district faces wage stagnation as well, not only in the medical area, but throughout the district. What kind of plans would you have to attempt to make that better in your district?
So one of the fastest, most effective ways we can address that is to raise the federal minimum wage.
There you go.
Here in Washington, we're blessed that our state legislature has seen to have a minimum wage that's higher than the national one, but it's still not enough. I mean, we need to have a path. I'm not sure exactly where the right number is, but I'm thinking it's north of $20 an hour. Mm-hmm. Where people can have, where they can afford an apartment. It's right now in our area, a one bedroom apartment is $17, $18 a month, maybe $2,000.
What town is that, or what city is that?
That's just a little Walla Walla. And,
wow.
Yeah, it is. And it's worse in Spokane, where it's an urban area. So when you look at somebody making a minimum wage, you can't, and and this in the Starbucks workers are probably a pretty good example of this. Starbucks used to be a really great company to work for. They've been through like 4 CEOs in the last 4 years. And 4 years ago, they negotiated a union contract, and they still don't have one because they've come to an impasse. Starbucks is refusing to put any kind of wage concessions in, any kind of wage. They traditionally paid very well, but the last several years, their raises have been well below the rate of inflation, and they're at risk of losing. I won't call it a living wage, but it was more near a living wage than
many other places.
Right. So that's the biggest one that we could just do right off the bat. And then the rest is, I think the rest is a lot of economic development. That just doesn't happen very much out in rural areas. There's not a lot of coordination amongst some of the government agencies that are charged with this. And we can build on the advantages we have. The people that do move into this district, and there's a fair number of them, and frankly, it's a lot of retirees that move into this district because they're looking for quality of life. I mean, we have a wonderful outdoor life here in the Pacific Northwest, and people respond to that when they have a choice to move into the area. But we need to be able to draw working families into this area as well. We need to have those schools, those affordable places to live, jobs for them to work in. When I was working in healthcare and doing a fair amount of physician recruiting, one of the biggest stumbles we had was when physicians would be all fired up about coming to work in our hospital and in living in our town, and they'd say, "Well, what sort of opportunities do you have for my spouse?" And it was kind of like, that's one problem. Yeah.
Well, now, as a retired Air Force colonel, how do you separate genuine national security needs from defense spending that enriches contractors while neglecting veterans and service families? I mean, the contractors are always well funded. Veterans, not so much.
Yeah, that's an issue. And the military does depend a lot on federal contractors, and I don't want to bash federal contractors and say that they're all bad, but they're it's one of the easiest problem. It's one of the easiest ways to solve a problem for the military. The officers are sitting around thinking, okay, how do we solve this problem? And it's, well, let's hire a contractor. That just needs to be really well thought out. And maybe there could be some sort of more congressional oversight over contracts over a certain amount. Maybe that would be a good way to go on something like that. So, yeah.
Well, look, let me tell you, I think we've covered quite a few areas, and we're coming up on time now. So what I always end my interviews with, what should I have asked you that I didn't? And in this section, for all the things that you want to say that I didn't ask, please go for it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Egberto, for this chance to talk with you and all of your viewers as well. You should have asked me about my values. So I think that's something that's really missing in Congress right now, is people with values and knowing what they stand for. And I don't hear politicians talking about that very much. And I will tell you that my values are integrity, service, and excellence. And my parents taught me to always act with integrity. My faith taught me to serve all. And the Air Force taught me to lead with excellence. So that's what I try to do every day. It's guided my life. And I think those values would be a great thing for Congress to adopt. In fact, all of government. Integrity first, and we're here to serve the American people, and we're going to do it with excellence. One of the things I've always hated is the phrase, "It's close enough for government work." Nobody.
Guilty.
Nobody in government should ever say that. You know what they should say instead is, you know what? That's not close enough for government work. We should change the standard there as well. The other thing I want to talk about is how I will work in Congress. And you notice the word I use the word work. Too many politicians talk about, I'm going to fight for you. Well, fighting is what's got us to where we are today. We elect those politicians and then they go to Congress, to the other Washington, and they don't fight for us. They fight each other. It's crazy. Fighters create enemies and they leave casualties. I'm not going to fight. I'm going to work, and I'll work with anybody who will roll up their sleeves and work for the people of Eastern Washington and the people of America. I'm going to work there like I worked in the hospitals and healthcare when I was doing that, which is I listen to other people first. I hear what they have to say. We discuss things. We collaborate. We build alliances across ideologies to get to a goal. And I think that can work in Congress. And maybe I'm naive and just a wild-eyed optimist, but I think that's the way to go, because at least what we're doing right now just isn't working. So so that's my that's what you didn't ask me about.
well, let me tell you, I didn't ask it, but rest assured, it was inferred, because again, the answers of everything that you gave, one could infer your values from it. But let me tell you, even better, no, that's not naivete. If more people like you decided I'm going to serve, then we'll get exactly what we deserve, which is good government. We the people, good government. Let me just tell you, David, it has been a pleasure for me to interview you. I really have high hopes that this is the year that many districts like yours will pull it through with good participants who have our well-being at hand right now. So again, I want to, first of all, thank you for wanting to serve. I hope this also encourage others to do exactly what you're doing. So thank you for being on Politics Done Right. Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It. As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your